The first light of dawn barely touched the horizon when the wolf brigade emerged from the shadows of the forest, their boots silent on the cracked earth and their eyes scanning every movement in the ruined valley ahead. Soldiers from other units whispered about them in fear and awe. No one knew how many battles they had survived or how many enemies had fallen to their relentless precision. The commander of the brigade moved ahead like a ghost, surveying the terrain with a mind that seemed to anticipate every attack behind him. The rest of the unit followed in perfect silence, every step measured, every glance synchronized, as if they were part of a single organism. Rumors of their survival spread faster than fire in dry grass, and the enemy already feared the coming storm. The valley was littered with the remnants of past conflicts, broken weapons, torn banners, and the skeletal remains of armored vehicles that had once belonged to armies claiming victory, but now forgotten. The wolves paused near a crumbling wall, scanning the horizon for the first signs of the enemy reinforcements. The wind carried distant shouts and the smell of smoke and blood, and still they waited, knowing patience would be their greatest weapon. They had survived ambushes that had shattered entire divisions, and they had moved through lands where no other unit dared to tread. Every scar on their bodies a story of betrayal and endurance. Every member carried memories of fallen comrades whose sacrifices had forged the unbreakable bond between them. As they crouched behind the ruins, a scout returned silently, handing the commander a crude map with marks indicating enemy positions further down the ridge. The commander traced a path with his eyes, imagining the movement of his soldiers like shadows weaving through the chaos. The enemy would strike soon, and they would be ready, but there was a tension in the air that even the veterans felt, a sense that something beyond ordinary battle was approaching, a presence that could challenge even the legendary endurance of the Wolf Brigade. Just as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the valley, a distant rumble shook the ground, signaling the approach of armored vehicles, and the sharp crack of gunfire echoed in the hills like a warning to those who underestimated the wolves. The members of the brigade tightened their grips on their weapons and exchanged silent glances, each one knowing that the moment had come when legend would meet reality, and the first clash would decide who would survive the coming inferno. From the shadows, a figure moved closer, unseen by the enemy, but marking the beginning of a confrontation that no one would forget. And in that instant, the valley seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to descend, leaving the question of who would strike first lingering in the minds of everyone watching the horizon. The Wolf Brigade waited in the shadows of the ruined valley as the first signs of the enemy emerged through the morning mist. Their movements were swift, silent, and calculated, like predators circling their prey. The armored vehicles rumbled closer, sending vibrations through the cracked earth, but the wolves remained unseen, blending with the rubble and twisted metal. Their eyes scanned every opening, every gap in the line, and every soldier who dared to peek from cover. The commander signaled with a subtle hand movement, and the unit split into smaller groups, weaving through the ruins with precision, striking from multiple directions at once. The enemy faltered, as if an invisible force was dismantling their formation. Bullets ripped through the air, explosions erupted, and smoke filled the valley, creating a chaotic veil behind which the wolves advanced. They moved with deadly grace, no hesitation, no fear, taking down soldiers and armored units with a fluidity that seemed unnatural even when caught in crossfire. They dove and rolled with instinct born of countless battles. At one point, a section of the enemy tried to flank the wolves, but they met a silent counter-ambush, their numbers disappearing as if the shadows themselves had attacked. One member of the brigade noticed a strange signal coming from a ridge, a pattern that suggested someone knew their positions before they had arrived. The commander narrowed his eyes, sensing betrayal, but continued to lead his men through the carnage. Each fallen enemy added to their legend, and the whispers among survivors would grow into fear. The valley shook again with the thunder of incoming reinforcements, but the wolves anticipated the approach, cutting off supply lines, sabotaging vehicles, and creating chaos in the ranks. The enemy commanders shouted orders that went unanswered as the Wolf Brigade became the storm. No ordinary soldiers could withstand. The sun climbed higher, and the heat of battle pressed down on everyone, the air thick with smoke and fear. Yet still the wolves pressed forward, unbroken, undeterred, and unstoppable. Their reputation grew with every precise movement, every strike from the shadows, and every survivor who whispered their names in terror. In the midst of the chaos, a scout returned, panting with urgent news that enemy artillery had been repositioned to target their escape routes. The commander paused for a heartbeat, calculating the risk, knowing that one wrong move could cost them everything. He gestured for a diversion as another squad prepared to strike deeper into the valley. And as the enemy looked toward the approaching smoke, a sudden roar echoed from the hillside like the call of unseen beasts, signaling that the real assault had just begun, and leaving the soldiers and the observers alike wondering who would survive the wrath of the Wolf Brigade in the battles yet to come. Night fell over the ruined valley and the wolf brigade regrouped in the shadows of collapsed walls and burnt vehicles. Their bodies were exhausted, but their eyes burned with unyielding resolve. The commander gathered his men around a small fire, its flames flickering shadows across faces scarred and hardened by countless battles. They shared no words, only glances and subtle nods, for every man knew the weight of what they carried, memories of fallen comrades and betrayals that had tested their loyalty to the edge. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and earth, and every sound carried the threat of discovery. A scout returned with news of enemy reinforcements moving silently through the mist, suggesting that an ambush awaited them further along the ridge. The commander traced the movements on a crude map and spoke softly to himself, calculating the odds. Survival and sacrifice. Every member of the brigade checked their weapons one last time, every heartbeat a reminder of the thin line between life and death. Outside the ruins, distant shouts and the echo of marching feet grew louder, signaling that the enemy was closing in. Unaware that the wolves were already preparing a trap, every movement of the brigade was deliberate, like a shadow weaving through chaos, and when the first enemy patrol stumbled into their path, they were met with silent, ruthless precision. The fight was swift and brutal. Bodies fell and disappeared into the darkness as if claimed by the night itself. The commander signaled a retreat further into the valley, a planned maneuver that lured the enemy into a narrow canyon where the wolves could control the battlefield like predators cornering prey. Every step was a test of endurance, every breath a calculation of survival. As they moved deeper, the distant rumble of artillery grew louder, sending vibrations through the ground, and the knowledge that their path would soon be blocked weighed heavily on them. A young recruit stumbled and almost fell, but a veteran caught him without a sound, a silent reminder that the bond between them was unbreakable. Even in the midst of chaos, they maintained order, no hesitation, no panic, only focus and deadly precision. The canyon ahead was dark and foreboding, its walls scarred with the remnants of past battles, and the whispers of the dead seemed to echo with every step. The commander raised his hand, signaling the final approach, and as the enemy emerged from the mist, the first shots rang out like thunder, sending the valley into chaos once again and leaving the wolf brigade poised on the edge of confrontation, ready to strike with a force that would leave the enemy questioning whether they were facing men or shadows, moving with a ferocity that could not be broken. And yet in the distance, a larger shape moved silently on the ridge, unseen, threatening to change everything in a moment of reckoning that none would forget. The wolf brigade moved silently through the narrow canyon, the walls rising like dark sentinels on either side. Every step measured, every movement precise, as if the shadows themselves guided them. The commander led from the front, his eyes scanning for signs of the enemy ambush that they knew would come. The air was thick with tension, and the smell of smoke and blood clung to every corner of the ravine behind him. The soldiers followed in perfect formation, their breathing slow, controlled, and deadly. The first shots rang out suddenly from above the cliffs, sending rocks and dust cascading onto the path below, but the wolves had anticipated the attack, diving and rolling into cover with instinctive grace. Every return shot was deliberate, every move calculated. The enemy faltered as they realized that the soldiers they faced were unlike any they had encountered before. Like shadows, the brigade struck silently, picking off targets with precision before disappearing into the darkness, only to reappear moments later in another deadly formation. One member noticed movement higher up the canyon, a figure moving faster than any man should be capable of, suggesting a hidden sniper or perhaps something more sinister. The commander signaled to split the squad, sending a group to flank the enemy, while others created a diversion, throwing the attackers off balance. The clash was brutal and fast. Bodies fell into the dust and smoke, but the wolves did not hesitate. They pressed forward, relentless, as if the canyon itself fueled their strength. A distant explosion shook the walls and the rumble of reinforcements approached, signaling that this was only the beginning of the true battle. Every soldier of the wolf brigade moved as one entity, each action supporting another, every glance anticipating the next strike. Their unity was terrifying, and the enemy began to retreat in panic, unable to predict or counter the relentless assault. The commander paused for a moment, noticing a trail of footprints diverging from the main path. The presence of a traitor or scout within enemy lines hinted that they were being tracked, and that the true danger had yet to arrive. The wolves prepared for the next wave, each heart pounding with the adrenaline of battle, yet tempered with the discipline of survival. They set traps along the canyon and marked paths that would confuse and slow the enemy, allowing the brigade to strike again like predators striking a wounded herd. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ravine, the valley seemed alive with whispers and movements, signaling that the confrontation was far from over and leaving the enemy unsure who was hunter and who was prey, while the wolf brigade waited patiently, ready to unleash their next strike into the darkness where no one could anticipate their fury, and the true test of survival had only just begun. The Wolf Brigade moved swiftly through the twilight of the canyon, their silhouettes merging with the shadows like predators stalking prey. The commander signaled for the squad to spread out, using the rocky terrain for cover, every soldier knowing instinctively how to position themselves for maximum effect. The distant sounds of reinforcements echoed through the valley, the rumble of armored vehicles and the shout of commanders blending with the hiss of gunfire and the screams of those caught in the crossfire. The wolves struck first with precision and brutality, taking down sentries before they could raise the alarm. Every movement was choreographed, as if rehearsed countless times in the memory of survival. Each fallen enemy added to their legend, and whispered fear spread among the approaching forces. The commander observed a sniper hidden on a ridge, calculating the perfect angle to neutralize the threat without exposing his men. The squad moved like shadows, silent, deadly, unstoppable, their reputation preceding them. Even as the first glow of fire from the advancing enemy lit the canyon, the wolves pressed forward, setting traps and ambushes with ruthless efficiency. Bodies fell and disappeared into the darkness as the enemy struggled to regroup. Each member relied on the unspoken bond forged through countless battles, trusting instincts over orders. As the terrain became their ally, the sniper fired but was intercepted by a young soldier whose reflexes were honed to perfection. Sacrificing his position to save the commander, the explosion of gunfire and collapsing rocks created chaos, but the Wolf Brigade remained unbroken, striking from every angle, confusing and dismantling the enemy line. The commander noticed movement behind them, a trail of smoke signaling reinforcements approaching from an unexpected direction, and realized the battle was far from over. Every breath carried the weight of exhaustion and adrenaline, yet they advanced relentless, every heartbeat echoing the promise that they would not surrender. The distant roar of artillery added a layer of terror, but also opportunity, as the wolves used the distraction to infiltrate deeper, striking at command posts and sabotaging equipment. Their coordination was flawless, every strike calculated to weaken and demoralize the enemy. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the valley became a maze of shadows where survival depended on instinct and courage. Every soldier of the Wolf Brigade felt the presence of unseen watchers, sensing that the true enemy had yet to reveal itself. As the darkness thickened and the night became alive with whispers of legends in motion, leaving every man and enemy alike unsure who would survive the storm that was about to descend, and what unseen force would turn the tide forever. And the echoes of the wolves grow louder in every direction, warning that the unbroken would not be defeated easily. The Wolf Brigade pressed deeper into enemy territory, moving like ghosts through the ruined landscape, every shadow a potential threat, every sound a signal of danger. The commander led with unmatched focus, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of hidden traps or ambushes behind him. The soldiers followed silently, each step precise and deliberate, as if the ground itself guided them through the chaos. The distant rumble of artillery and the sharp crack of gunfire echoed through the abandoned buildings and crumbling walls, creating a symphony of war that only heightened their senses. The wolves split into smaller units, striking swiftly at patrols and supply lines, leaving confusion and fear in their wake. Every fallen enemy was a warning to those who thought they could contain the brigade. Their coordination was flawless, every attack synchronized like a predator herd moving in unison. Each member relied on instincts honed through countless battles, trusting the bond with their brothers over words or orders. As night fell, the darkness became an ally, masking their movements and amplifying their legend. Villagers who had witnessed their attacks whispered of shadows that moved like wolves, striking and vanishing before anyone could react. The commander paused on a ridge, observing the terrain, a feeling of unease crawling along his spine, sensing that a hidden enemy agent had discovered their path. One scout returned silently, handing urgent news that a trap had been set to block their retreat and force them into a kill zone. The commander calculated the risk, knowing that any misstep could cost the entire unit their lives. He signaled for a diversion, and a small team moved to flank the enemy, drawing attention away from the main force. The enemy fired blindly into the darkness, falling into the trap with lethal precision. The wolves pressed forward, relentless and unstoppable, their movements fluid and deadly, their silhouettes merged with the shadows, creating a terrifying spectacle for any who dared to watch. The trail of destruction behind them was evidence of their unbroken spirit and unyielding determination. Every soldier felt the weight of survival pressing down, knowing that even the smallest mistake could end everything. Yet despite exhaustion, wounds, and loss, their resolve never faltered. They moved silently through the ruins, avoiding detection and setting new traps for those foolish enough to follow. The night seemed alive with whispers and movements, signaling that the confrontation was far from over, leaving the enemy unsure who was hunter and who was prey. And the Wolf Brigade poised to strike again, with a force that could not be broken and a determination that would echo across the valley for years to come. The Wolf Brigade advanced cautiously through the twisted remains of the city, every street a maze of rubble and shadows, their senses sharpened to every sound, every flicker of movement. the commander signaled for the unit to spread out using the ruined buildings for cover and creating overlapping fields of observation. Every soldier moved with precision, every glance anticipating the next threat. The distant rumble of approaching enemy tanks echoed through the streets, but the wolves remained hidden. Blending with the darkness and debris as they moved deeper, they discovered signs of a traitor, someone who had leaked their positions, and the commander felt a chill crawl along his spine, knowing the betrayal could cost them everything. He silently ordered a small team to track the movements without alerting the enemy. The night was thick with tension, the air heavy with smoke, and the stench of war. Each step brought them closer to the enemy command center, yet danger lurked in every shadow and every window. Every patrol they encountered was struck with silent efficiency. Bodies fell without warning and disappeared into the ruins, leaving only the echoes of fear behind. The commander paused on a rooftop, observing a squad of soldiers signaling to each other with lights and sounds that suggested the trap was set for them. He gestured to his men to prepare an ambush, exploiting the enemy's overconfidence. The wolves moved like shadows, striking from multiple directions, cutting down anyone who dared resist. Every action was deliberate, every move precise, as if guided by instinct rather than orders. They advanced through the ruins, leaving chaos in their wake, and the enemy began to panic, realizing that the unit they faced was unlike any other. Their reputation as unbreakable warriors justified by every precise strike. At one point, a young soldier stumbled into a narrow alley, almost exposing the team, but a veteran dove to cover him, saving the mission and reinforcing the unspoken bond that held the brigade together. The distant glow of fires and the rumble of artillery reminded them that the city itself had become a battlefield, and that survival depended on skill, courage, and trust. The commander noticed movement in a collapsed building across the street, a silhouette that did not match any enemy profile, suggesting the presence of a hidden watcher, or perhaps another traitor. The wolves readied themselves, silent and deadly, waiting for the signal to strike, and the tension mounted, leaving both the enemy and the reader unsure who would make the first fatal move and what shadows would emerge from the darkness to tip the battle in favor of the unbroken Wolf Brigade, whose legend was growing with every heartbeat in the night. The Wolf Brigade pressed forward through the smoldering ruins of the city, their movements silent like shadows slipping through the chaos. Every soldier remained alert, every sense stretched to the limit as the enemy regrouped and attempted to predict their path. The commander led from the front, his eyes scanning rooftops, alleys, and broken streets for any sign of ambush or hidden threats behind him. The unit moved as one fluid entity, every glance and gesture unspoken communication honed through countless battles. The distant roar of artillery and the tremor of falling debris reverberated through the city, creating a backdrop of destruction that only heightened their senses. Each squad split into smaller teams, striking swiftly at patrol supply lines and hidden strong points, leaving fear and confusion in their wake. Every attack was precise, calculated, and ruthless, as the wolves struck before disappearing into the shadows. The enemy scrambled to mount a defense, but the brigade anticipated every move, predicting reinforcements and counterattacks with uncanny accuracy. As night deepened, the city became a labyrinth of shadows where survival depended on instinct and trust. Every member felt the weight of exhaustion, but the drive to survive and complete the mission pushed them forward. Bodies fell silently into the darkness, some enemy soldiers barely aware of the fate that had claimed them. The commander noticed movement along a distant ridge, a shadow moving faster than any man should be capable, suggesting a sniper or hidden observer. The wolves adjusted their formation, sending a small squad to intercept, while the rest prepared a diversion, trapping the approaching enemy between deadly lines of fire. The clash was brutal and swift, and the echoes of gunfire and explosions mingled with the cries of the fallen, creating a nightmarish symphony. The Wolf Brigade advanced relentlessly, leaving behind trails of chaos that spread panic among enemy ranks. Every soldier relied on instincts over orders, trusting the unbreakable bond with their brothers to guide each movement. The commander paused briefly, observing a building that seemed abandoned yet radiated a strange energy, suggesting hidden danger waiting to strike at the perfect moment. The wolves readied themselves, moving into position, the tension thickening with every heartbeat, and the enemy unaware that the true assault was about to begin from directions they could not anticipate, creating a storm of fire and shadows that would decide the fate of all those who dared oppose the unbroken Wolf Brigade, leaving the city trembling with fear and the lingering question of who would survive the night and what unseen force would emerge victorious. The Wolf Brigade moved deeper into the heart of the destroyed city, every shadow a potential threat, every sound a warning. The commander led from the front, his eyes scanning rooftops, alleyways, and shattered streets for signs of enemy movement or hidden traps. Behind him, the soldiers followed silently, each step deliberate, each breath controlled, as if the air itself carried the secrets of survival. The distant rumble of artillery grew louder, mixing with the sharp crack of gunfire and the occasional Scream echoing through the empty streets, every squad split into smaller units moving like shadows, striking with lethal precision and disappearing before the enemy could react. The walls of ruined buildings were their allies, offering cover and vantage points for snipers and scouts. Every member of the brigade relied on instincts honed through countless battles, trusting each glance, each subtle gesture to convey orders and warnings. A young recruit stumbled, nearly exposing a flank, but a veteran dove to cover him, silently pulling him into safety, reinforcing the bond that held the unit together. The enemy scrambled to regroup, sending patrols to intercept, but the wolves anticipated every move, setting traps along streets and alleys, slowing the advance and causing chaos within their ranks. Explosions and gunfire lit up the night, creating a deadly spectacle of fire and shadows. The commander observed movement on a distant ridge, a silhouette that did not match any enemy profile, suggesting a hidden observer or assassin waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The brigade prepared to strike simultaneously from multiple directions, cutting off escape routes and disorienting the enemy, who had no idea where the next attack would come from. Every shot fired, every trap sprung added to their growing legend and instilled terror into all who faced them. As the battle raged on, the Wolf Brigade pressed forward, relentless and unbroken. Bodies fell and disappeared into the darkness, each action precise and deadly, leaving the enemy disoriented and panicked. The commander signaled for a final push deeper into the city, a coordinated strike designed to overwhelm the remaining forces before reinforcements could arrive. The soldiers moved like shadows, blending with the night, striking fear into anyone who dared resist. But in the distance, a massive shadow moved silently over the rooftops, something larger than any soldier, a presence that hinted at a final challenge. Yet unseen, the wolves readied themselves, knowing that the confrontation was far from over and that the ultimate test of survival was about to descend upon them, leaving the enemy and the reader unsure who would survive the storm of shadows and fire, and which force would emerge victorious in the end. The Wolf Brigade stood at the heart of the city, their bodies battered, their weapons spent, and their eyes scanning every shadow for the final strike. The commander raised his hand, signaling the unit to spread out, using every ruin and alley to create overlapping fields of attack. The distant roar of approaching enemy reinforcements grew louder, and the tremor of artillery shook the streets, but the wolves remained calm, their focus unbroken, as if the chaos itself fueled their strength. Every soldier moved with deadly precision, striking swiftly and vanishing before the enemy could counterattack. The city around them became a labyrinth of smoke, fire, and fallen soldiers, each step a test of endurance, every heartbeat a reminder that survival depended on unity and instinct. The enemy panicked as they realized the unit they faced was unlike any other, their formation crumbling under the relentless assault. The commander noticed movement along the rooftops, a massive silhouette that moved silently, faster than any human should be capable, suggesting a final hidden threat. The wolves adjusted their positions, silently preparing to confront this unknown force. Their attacks were coordinated, flawless, and terrifying, striking from multiple directions, the enemy falling back in chaos, unable to predict where the next blow would come from. Each fallen brother of the brigade was honored silently as the unit pressed forward, unbroken, determined, and unstoppable. The massive shadow descended, finally revealing a heavily armored squad of enemy elites ready to crush anyone who survived the previous onslaught. The commander signaled the final charge, the Wolf Brigade moving like a storm, striking with unrelenting fury. Bodies fell and screams echoed through the ruins, yet still the wolves advanced unbroken. Even when surrounded, exhaustion and wounds threatening to overtake them, they fought with the precision and ferocity of predators, cornered yet unafraid. The enemy line shattered, the remaining soldiers retreating into the darkness, leaving the Wolf Brigade standing victorious yet silent among the ruins. Every man of the unit looked to the horizon, their breathing heavy, their eyes scanning for any last threat, knowing that the legend they had become was forged in blood and shadow. The city seemed to hold its breath, the fires casting long shadows of the wolves that merged with the night, their silhouettes unbroken, untouchable, and immortal. The commander lowered his weapon, finally signaling the end of the assault. But in that silence, the air seemed alive with whispers of the unbroken as the Wolf Brigade vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a tale of courage, endurance, and terror that would be whispered across lands and armies forever, a reminder that even when every force tried to break them, they remained unstoppable, unyielding, and undefeated, a living legend whose story would never be forgotten.